Good morning. My name is Antonio. I'm the founder of Faith Plus Nothing Ministries. Today is July 2026. And what I want to speak about today is Christian nationalism and how Christian nationalism is more or less, I feel destroying the country. What it is people have really, they don't really have a good understanding of the Bible or, biblical principles or history for that matter. And what it is that if you look like in history and you look at like say when Jesus came on the scene, like 2,000 years ago, at the time the Jews were looking for a leader, someone to set them free, someone to make them great again, someone to take them from their place of being subjects to Roman rule, so they would free themselves from their oppressors, and they would create this dynasty, this golden age that would come, and they would rule over the other nations. So they thought this was going to happen through like a great leader, like someone like we have now as our president, someone who's like a mean person or a ruler, or maybe they thought like a strong person, which I don't think we have now. But anyway, like they'd have like a strong person or a leader or a ruler who would come and destroy their enemies, vanquish them with like might, and then make them like powerful leaders. And the ruling religious class at that time, their idea of success was like it is now, where they had like properties and they had wealth and they had status. You know what I mean? And so they wanted a conqueror, a coming ruler, a coming conqueror to vanquish their enemies and create that golden age that they figured that they would rule over the other kingdoms and the other lands. That's not how Jesus came, though. Jesus came as a servant. They wanted Jesus to be someone of power, of might, and he came, he humbled himself even unto death. So just like, in America now, they're wanting a ruler. They want someone who's strong, who can, make America great again, who can make it powerful or whatever. And so they're looking to the strong man, a bully, a big mouth, someone who's really just, stealing all this wealth for themselves. And what's alarming is that they're using Christianity, in a guise to do all this stuff. And they have a lot of people who, they claim Christianity or they claim to be Christian, and they think that America is this Christian nation or this nation built, on Christianity. And what it's really because they don't, maybe, they have a confused sense of patriotism and the Bible, but they don't really understand American history. Just like then for like God can't, like he can't accept a murderer like into the temple. He can't accept like bloody hands. He can't accept sin. You know what I mean? So like for a country to call itself a Christian nation, it can't be, because Christ is coming to set up his kingdom. Remember when Israel was waiting for Christ to come set up his kingdom, they killed Christ, and then Israel was destroyed like 70 years later. So like now, like people want like Christ to come, or they want America or some kind of leader, some kind of strong man to come and set up a kingdom, a golden age. And really, we know this is the Antichrist. But people, they still want it anyway. They think that somehow through strength, through rule, through money, through war, and through monetary gain, through a world system, that they're going to gain this place of power, this place of strength, and this place of superiority, and they're going to rule maybe along with Israel or something like that. They have this delusion in their mind. And what it is that there's these people that are taking like history, and they're taking the Bible, and they're spinning it all together, and they're creating this identity called Christian nationalism. And a lot of it's based on racism and misunderstanding of the Bible, and it's based on hate. If people understood history of the United States at all, there was a treaty called the Treaty of Tripoli. It was made in like 1796, I think. And in the Treaty of Tripoli, it clearly states that America was not founded on Christian principles. Reason being, the people who are the signers of the Declaration of Independence, people like that, these people were deists. They believed in thinker, knower, doer, instead of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. These people were Freemasons. They believed in like a something of a God, but not as the God of Christianity. And the things that are in the Bible were used as symbolism. And that's why these people were caught up in the occult, like Benjamin Franklin being in the Hellfire Society, things like that. They were, involved in all sorts of evil. They had slaves, drug use, rape, all that stuff they were involved in, and conquest. They're involved in hurting people. So this isn't what Christians do. This isn't how Christians come and set up a nation. You know what I mean? And they were pretty clear that they weren't founded on Christian principles. So if we look at slavery wasn't a Christian idea. That's not a Christian idea to want to enslave people, own people as property. And that's why they had a civil war over slavery. And I think about 750,000 people perished because of disease and because of war, because of the Civil War, over people deciding, they don't think it's right to own people as slaves, as cattle. You know what I mean? So, America is founded on, the genocide of Native Americans. Even when Columbus landed in Hispaniola, the people were peaceful, loving. This was paradise they landed in. These people were loving. They were naked. They said they were beautiful. They shared everything in common. They shared everything with a big open heart. And he said they'd make good slaves. He found out they had gold, and he killed the entire population of Hispaniola, which is where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are now. That's why the people are dark, like from Africa, instead of brown, like Native Americans, because they killed the indigenous people. They killed them in mines for mining gold. They'd stick these big old dogs on them, these big bull massive dogs that could crush their skull in one bite. They terrorized them with hounds, starved them. You know what I mean? This is brutal, evil people. This isn't Christianity. So people need to understand, and that's why they want to hide history. They don't want you to understand what they did to each other during the Civil War. They don't want you to understand, what they did to people with like the CIA with experiments, what they did to people of color with the gonorrhea studies. They do all these sorts of evil things all around the world. People want to say it's a Christian nation. It's not a Christian nation. It's a nation that has some Christian sounding principles, and they use the Bible, as a metaphor. But it's set up really on our whole government set up on Native American ideas, and it's a mixture of these Native American, the way they set up their stuff, and the way that people mix it in with like the Bible and all this other stuff. But it's definitely not a Christian nation. And then to make a nation where it's exclusionary, where it's like you got to be like white, like you got to hate people of all other colors and genders, and like you got to subjugate, and rule. That's nothing to do with Christianity. The Apostle Paul, if you're a Christian, you'll understand the letters of the Apostle Paul and what the Apostle Paul did. He said, "Be ye followers of me, even as I am of Christ. I am your example." So what did Paul do? Paul refused to take money for witnessing the gospel. He did collect money, and he gave it to the Jews in Jerusalem, but Paul refused to hoard wealth. He went hungry. He went without. He went naked. Paul was beat a whole bunch of times. He was shipwrecked. He was stoned. Paul went through it, and Paul, as that example, gave his whole life and never hoarded wealth, you know what I mean, or started armies, started any kind of fights, and went to other countries and didn't make them, he brought the gospel to them. He didn't bring a battle to them. He didn't bring economics to them. He didn't bring commerce to them. You know what I mean? So the Apostle Paul being our example, that is the example of a Christian. Paul turned his back on Judaism, the religious class at the time. He said, "I gained much from the Jewish religion." Walked directly away from it because he knew and he understood that the way they were running the system, it had to do with the world system, it had to do with economics, it had to do with power, prestige, things like that, things that are contrary to the spirit of Christ, the spirit of love. Christ came humble as a servant. As Christians, we come humble and as a servant. We don't say F your feelings. We don't say we don't want to hurt. We don't want to be billionaires. We don't want to hoard wealth. We don't want to have millions of dollars. We'd rather just help somebody and be thankful for our daily bread. That's what a Christian is. A Christian isn't somebody who wants to rule over other people, who wants to hoard wealth. A Christian is somebody who loves and wants to reciprocate love, because that's what God created us for. It was to love and to reciprocate love. The idea of Christian nationalism, these hate groups, the stuff of that, America's a Christian nation and that some people are better and some people are worse. The Bible says to love your enemies. He says, there's over and over again, God shows over and over again, like the parable of the Good Samaritan, and how not to be racist, because those Samaritans were half-breed. They were half Jewish, half Assyrian. So God showed that even these people who weren't full-blooded Jews understood and practiced, the Torah better than the Jewish people did who claimed the Torah. And that's what they were, is that they also practiced the Torah, but the Jews hated them. So anywho, that's what I wanted to get through to you guys today. Is just something short. Is Christian nationalism is an abomination. America never was a Christian nation. It never will be a Christian nation. And the people who are selling it to you are taking you for a ride, and you're being deceived. So, it's pretty plain and simple, but, just wanted to get something out there, and that's what I got for today. Love you, man. Thanks for listening.